Live webinars, continuing education series presented by the American Council on Exercise. My name is Jackie Crockford and I will be your host for today's live presentation. Before we get started, let's go over a few logistics so you can have a great learning experience. You are watching today for free via YouTube. Thank you so much for taking the time out to enjoy today's live webinar. If you have any questions for today's presentation, make sure you use the chat bar in the YouTube viewer to type in your question for our presenter, and if you have any technical issues during the presentation. I'll be monitoring those questions throughout, and at the end of today's live presentation, we'll take those questions and ask our presenter. Also, if you would like to receive continuing education credits for today's presentation, remember you are watching today for free, but you can purchase this recorded version using the link provided on your screen. That's acefitness.org/past-webinars. Once you receive the recorded version in your MyAce account, you can pass the quiz associated with this course, and you'll receive 0.1 CECs within your MyAce account. Okay, if you're ready for today's course, let's get started. Welcome to your course, Stress Management, Reducing Stress for Better Health. My name is Jackie Crockford and I will be your host for today's presentation. Joining me today is our presenter, Kelly Vargo. Kelly.
Thank you, Jackie.
Hi, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Good, thank you. So you've been a friend of ACE for a very long time, and you are a certified health coach as well. So tell us a little bit about what you do outside of your role as a health coach with ACE and as an SME with ACE. What else are you doing?
Awesome, thank you so much, Jackie. Great question. So currently I am faculty at the George Washington University Milken Institute School of Public Health, where I teach in our undergraduate program for exercise and nutrition sciences and involved with our Masters of Public Health program. In addition, with working with ACE, I also do some work for the National Council of Promoting Physical Activity and have my current health coaching business where I work with corporate organizations and individuals one-on-one.
Great. So you're going to be talking today a little bit about stress.
Who has stress?
Nobody has stress, right? So we're going to be learning how to work with our clients, maybe our health coaching clients or our personal training clients, and you're going to be talking to us about stress management. Why is this so important?
I think all of us can relate in this day and age with how connected we are. I mean, in all honesty, I was firing off a few emails before I got here. That it's so important to manage stress if we're really trying to optimize our health and well-being. And I feel like this topic is kind of the foundation for all these other health topics that ACE addresses.
Great, great. So a lot of great information today.
Yes.
Let's get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie. And thank you all for taking time out of your day to be here. Greatly appreciated. I hope by the end of this webinar that you are able to take some of this information and apply it not only to your clients' lives, but to your own as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. So before we dive in, just a couple learning objectives that hopefully we can all walk away. As a professor in my day-to-day life, I really strive to make things applicable. As much as I love information, I also realize information is just that, information. And it isn't until we put it into practice that it really becomes useful. That's where the juicy stuff starts to happen. And so one of the first things today we're going to focus on, if you take a look at our learning objective slide, is identifying and describing the physiological effects of stress. So what's actually going on in our body, and then translating it so how we can change that through our thought process. The next one, we want to learn how to communicate the benefits of stress management to our clients, and lastly, equip them with the tools to change their behavior so they can manage stress better. So again, as we go through, Jackie mentioned previously, use that chat bar so we can address your questions, concerns, and thoughts. All right, so the question of the hour, what is stress? So do me a favor and take a minute, not even, we'll go 30 seconds, and let me know in the chat bar, what is stress to you? Is it an event? Is it an idea? Is it a concept? What is stress? As we mentioned previously, stress surrounds all of us, and especially in this era where we're so connected, I think it's important to step back and understand where this stress is coming from and how we can manage the way we respond to it. So thank you for your feedback on that. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the American Institute of Stress and how they define what it is. So again, on the slide, we talk about the definition formally. It is the non-specific response of the body to any demand for change. And if we think about life, that's the only thing constant, is change. So it's important, I think, for us as coaches, trainers, health professionals to understand stress and then understand how we can help our clients manage stress to optimize their health and well-being. So what causes stress? So many of you probably have heard the term stressor, and stressor is just that, anything that elicits a stress response. There are two types of stressors that are generalized in this study of stress, and that is eustress and distress. Eustress is anything that elicits a positive response to stress. I like to take, for example, crossing the finish line for any race that you've been training for or your client's been training for. That stress response is typically a good feeling. However, on the other end of the spectrum is distress. And this is anything that can elicit a negative response. And so this might be having to give a live presentation if that makes you stressed. But we can take that and respond to that in a positive way or a negative way. And the beauty of that is that we ourselves as humans have the ability to cognitively make that decision. So we have three types of stress: acute stress, episodic acute stress, and chronic stress. So although their names kind of exemplify what that means, we're going to take a little bit and dive into these a little bit deeper. So the most common type of acute stress is acute stress. So if we think about this, this is just merely an event that happens throughout the day. It might be that response you get when you're sitting in traffic. Where I live in DC, there's tons of that. And so that can easily create an acute stress response day to day. However, we can manage this. But acute stress has a short-term response. It's very quick and in the moment. And there's not really much extensive physical damage to the body. It might be that elevated blood pressure and heart rate quickly. We'll feel that quick adrenaline rush. But then soon, quickly, we're able to return to baseline. So we can feel some physiological changes when we're undergoing an acute stressful event. But again, these typically are one-off events. Now, what happens when we get a lot of those back to back to back? Or if we're typically a type A personality, we can be in a state of episodic acute stress. The irony here is this just goes to show you that people can change. When I was a high school student, my nickname was literally stress ball, and everything was such a big deal. But life doesn't have to be that way because we can use behavior-changing tools to change the way we process events. So again, episodic acute stress is a little bit more frequent than acute stress, but these people that exemplify episodic acute stress tend to always be rushed. I'm sure we can think of someone that's that. They're always running into a meeting late, they're always disheveled, they're always really nervous and jittery when they speak, and that's okay, but we can work to change that, and it's totally manageable. But again, episodic acute stress can elicit physical symptoms, that elevated heart rate, that jitteriness. We might have trouble speaking or clearing our thoughts, but we're gonna go in today to ways that we can treat this or manage this better. And last but not least, and unfortunately in our society, many people experience chronic stress. And chronic stress is long-standing. It's over a longer period of time. Conventionally, chronic stress is a result of a traumatic event or experience, such as a divorce, moving, a loss of a loved one, or even the birth of a new child. All these things can be pretty stressful events and elicit physical symptoms throughout our body. And we're gonna talk about the physiology of that in just a little bit. But again, the silver lining to all of this is there's a way to manage stress. And that's our goal today, is to go over those and figure out how we can manage stress and help our clients put these tools into practice. And again, as I mentioned, if you have questions or concerns or thoughts as we're going through today, definitely use the chat bar, and we'll be sure to address those at the end. So let's make the connection. We just addressed the three different types of stress, and we also talked about the different stressors, eustress and distress. So where does this all come together? Well, this is one of my favorite takeaways from this entire presentation, that stressors are in the eye of the beholder. What does that mean? So what's stressful to you might not be stressful to me, and what's stressful to me might not be stressful to you. And that same principle goes with every single client that we work with. And I think that's so important as a coach, trainer, mentor, teacher, etc., that we understand that all of life is relative. So it's interesting now being on the other side when I'm dealing with my undergraduate students because they're so stressed out during exam week. And although it can be easy to be like, you haven't been in the real world yet, the reality of it is stress is relative. But if we can teach people to cope with that based on their situation, we can make stress become eustress versus distress. So going from this, where does that eye of the beholder thing come into place? Well, it starts with the cognitive processing of an event. Our own cognitive processing of an event is what elicits that stress response. That response that is the physiological response that goes on in the body. And our role here as a health coach, we can help our clients manage this stress by teaching them tools to do so. However, I want to make a disclaimer, and you'll hear me say this throughout, that when a client approaches you that it seems like something that's beyond our scope of practice, it's really important that we know that we can refer out, and we should refer out to the appropriate professional. All right, so we've got the foundation, we've got the definition, we understand the 2 types of stressors, and we also understand the 3 types of stress. But let's get into the physiology so we can see where that mind-body connection comes into place. And don't get too stressed out about this. We're not going to go too much into the details of physiology. But for today, I just want us to understand the fundamentals. Okay, so you definitely want to check out the slides on these, as we created some graphics that will help explain the process that's going on in the body. So we're going to start at the top. We're taking a stressor, and then we're going to turn it into stress and what that response looks like. So let's say our stressor event is a 10-pound weight gain after coming back from a long trip in Europe. Now, a trip in Europe sounds amazing, but maybe gaining those 10 pounds, not so much. So we're going to see how we can change the way we approach this. So we come back, we step on the scale, we've gained 10 pounds, or I'm not the best at converting however many kilograms that is. So then we start appraising that situation, our cognitive appraisal. What does this mean? So we can either say, oh no, I'm awful, I gained 10 pounds, I'm just gonna do whatever I want now and let it go. Or, oh hey, I had a great trip in Europe with my family and friends. Yes, I gained 10 pounds and ate some great food, but now I'm back home and I'm gonna go back to what I know, exercising and choosing some healthier options. So we can see that mindset, the way that we perceive and cognitively appraise that event, can really transform the way our body responds. So the next thing, we have that cognitive appraisal and we go into that neurological triggering mechanisms. This is when our brain starts to tell our body what it needs to do. This then goes to the stress response. And the next few slides, we're gonna go over those 2 responses. But what I need you to take away from this slide is, again, going back to how we appraised that initial response to that stressor is what's going to trigger our stress response. So you can see that linear pathway. Once the stress response is elicited, which is basically the body's physical manifestation to messaging out to our body's organs what they need to do. Do they need to release hormones? Do they need to release adrenaline? Do they need to release cortisol? This is going to be based, leading back to that cognitive approach on how we appraise that situation. Based on that, that's going to elicit a behavior. So going back to that 10-pound weight gain from that amazing trip in Europe, did we say, oh no, I'm just gonna give up? Where our coping behavior might be like, I'm just gonna eat every comfort food in sight and not worry about it. Or, hey, this is a great opportunity to get back on track and get back to the gym and start eating healthy and going for walks on lunch. Again, all of that was in the eye of the beholder and how we viewed that situation to make a change and manage stress. So I use that example so that when you're working with your clients or coaches, I think it's so important to, 1, put ourselves in their shoes, and then 2, figure out what's the best way to cope with that stress. So ideally, we're getting that positive response to that stressor event. Let's create some eustress. Forget the distress. So the stress response, again, just the fundamentals today, but I want you to see if you can follow me along. So we have short-term responses to stress, which would be those acute stress time periods, as well as those episodic acute stress. And then we have chronic stress, which is going to elicit a long-term response. So we're going to be talking today, if you look at the slide, our sympathomedullary pathway system. That's a mouthful, so for today we're just going to call it SAM. And then the long-term response is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system. Again, a mouthful. So for today, we'll say HPA. The unifying thing about both of these is that infrastructure. The stress response starts in our mind before it impacts our body. So we're going to have a neuroendocrine, meaning a brain and hormone response that gets released. This then goes throughout our body and affects our cells down to the molecular level. The cool thing about this, if you think about it, what started out was a thought in our mind, and that process ignited this cascade of events that impacts our entire body. Chew on that for a second. Literally, our body went from perceiving an event, our mind got to make a decision, it got to choose how to respond, and then our body did just that. That's the power of managing stress, and we can help our clients do just that. All right, so let's talk about SAM. What does SAM do? So we're gonna start out, something stressful just happened. I'm speaking live. Our hypothalamus activates our adrenal medulla. So this happens in the brain. When this occurs, we feel this adrenaline rush. And yes, before Jackie called me out here, I felt that going on. But what happens is our adrenal medulla then releases the hormone adrenaline. It's that feeling, that rush that we get when we're under a stressor. This adrenaline rush arouses our sympathetic nervous system. And maybe you guys remember from high school biology or not, that's that fight or flight response. Do I need to be on guard right now? Or can I be relaxed? So this system occurs when we experience those acute stressor situations, going up that roller coaster, sitting in traffic, somebody honking the horn behind us, our text messages going off while we're in an important meeting. Those things can elicit this response. And then we have the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system, or HPA. So I'm going to take you through this. Again, think about this is that long-term chronic stress situation. We have a stressor. Let's say I'm going through a rough time in a relationship. So now our hypothalamus is activating our pituitary gland. This is then, the pituitary gland is going to release adrenocorticotropic hormone, ACTH for simplified case, which is then going to stimulate our adrenal glands to produce corticosteroid. This is then releases cortisol, and this is going to help our body regulate blood sugar, but it's also suppressing our immune system. So if we think about this from a higher level, if our body is under this stress for a long period of time, our immune system is down, which means we're susceptible to getting sick easier, to getting injured easier. And oftentimes, people that are under long-term stress tend to be tired and worn out. Can you think of anyone in your life that you could say might be experiencing this? Whether it's a client or yourself, it's something to think about. But again, that silver lining, we have the opportunity to change this. And if none of this makes sense, again, be sure to use that chat bar and we'll make sure we clear up any questions you may have. So as we can see, there's a mind-body connection between stress and our body. There's physical effects, mood effects, and behavioral effects. How many of you can say that you've actually physically felt the effects of stress, whether it is that increased heart rate, or those sweaty hands, or that tension in your shoulders, or that mood when maybe the things you normally are excited about, you're just not, or your client's just not, and behavioral effects. And that's when we talk about maybe that increase in appetite, decrease in appetite, engaging in excess activity, or maybe not doing any. There's a lot of behavioral, mood, and physical side effects that are linked to stress. So looking at the slide, we can see that there are lots of physiological responses to stress. Basically, every major system in our body. Our musculoskeletal system, we tend to tense up and keep stress in our muscles when we start to feel stress. This can then lead to back pain, any kind of joint pain, etc. Because when we're walking around pretty stressed out, we're pretty tight. It affects the respiratory system. Again, like we talked about, we can feel that heart rate going up. We start breathing quicker. Our cardiovascular system, it leads to elevated heart rate. Our endocrine system, we just went through the release of adrenaline and cortisol. Our gastrointestinal system, it can suppress our appetite, but then some people's coping behavior, it might increase our appetite to deal with stress. Our nervous system, we just talked about all the hormones that are released and how they're regulated based on the stress response. And then last but not least, it can also impact our ability to reproduce. So as you can see, stress impacts our entire body. And other things besides what it's going on physically is there's lots of symptoms of stress. So our clients can be having health complications because of that suppressed immune system, because of lack of sleep. There's a host of behaviors that can lead to showing symptoms of stress. Typically, people that are under stress show signs of anxiety and depression. There's a change in appetite. Again, this can be an increased appetite or a decrease in appetite. And there's a lack of focus, not being able to be present and in the moment. But as we get over later in today's presentation, we're going to talk about how we can manage this so that we can control these things from occurring. So why do we even manage stress? Like we just said, the one constant thing in life is change, and change induces stress. But I think the more important question is, why not? I think all of us as health coaches, trainers, mentors, teachers, we're ultimately trying to help our clients optimize fulfillment and happiness through health, through exercise, through becoming their best version of themselves. And by managing stress, we can help those people do just that. So, how can we help our clients with stress? There's more than one way. So for today, I'm going to go over some 4 key ways, but I would love if you guys, again, any methods or mechanisms that you have or you have experience with, put those in the chat bar. Let us know. So the 4 we're going to address today are cognitive behavioral coaching, relaxation techniques, goal setting, and the MOVE principle. So we're going to dive right in. Cognitive behavioral coaching. This is when we are working with our clients to change the way they think. And it sounds crazy, but we can actually do this. The 3 R's kind of help define cognitive behavioral coaching. And those are recognizing the thought, reevaluating the thought, and then reconstructing that thought. So for example, one of the tools that I learned was through a mentor and friend of mine, Dr. Amanda Visick. She's a pretty well-known sports psychologist. And I was struggling when I was in grad school one day with a cognitive behavioral thought process. And so she gave me this tool, and I challenge you to even try it out on yourselves if there's something that's triggering you or your clients to change your thought process about something. She had me put a rubber band on my wrist. And any time I caught myself thinking a thought, for example, at the time I was struggling with some eating issues, and I would get really anxious if I ended up wanting to have dessert. So what I had to do is anytime I was approached with dessert and I wanted it, but I was feeling guilty, I had to think that thought and rephrase it. Recognize that there's no reason to have this negative thought. Reevaluate it. Is this true? Am I really a bad person or not a healthy person if I decide to have dessert? No. And then reconstruct. Hey, it's okay to have this dessert because I know I exercise and take care of myself every day. So once I made those 3 R's happen, I would take the rubber band off of one wrist and place it on the other. And this process allows someone to literally walk through the thought process and reconstruct that thought. So again, just a simple tool. You don't need a whole lot, but it helps us practice the recognition piece of changing the thought process. And so again, just a simple, non-expensive tool that we can use to help our clients with restructuring their thoughts. And as we just talked about, that cognitive appraisal at the beginning of experience of stressor is really the key in determining, is this going to be a eustress or a distress? So I challenge you all to work with your clients on helping them recognize and reconstruct thoughts. The next one, relaxation techniques. I don't think there's enough of these in our society today, but we can change that. So the first one is yoga. There's lots of research that talks about the benefits of yoga. And being a hardcore former bodybuilder myself, I used to think yoga was for the birds, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I've experienced not only a great workout doing yoga, but I honestly can say it's truly changed my demeanor, going from that type A episodic acute person to being a more relaxed, rational, and in-the-moment person. So I challenge you all and your clients to think about, at least consider taking up the practice of yoga, especially if we're dealing with stress management. The next technique is meditation. And there's plenty of resources online that you can find to help with your clients and yourself go through a guided meditation. But even if you don't have access to that, or you're just not quite in that space, it doesn't take a lot to meditate. It's simply merely slowing the mind down and being quiet. One of the things, I took a Tai Chi class before, and it was really hard in the beginning because we were told to think about nothing. Have you ever tried to think about nothing? It's tough. But I challenge you to do that because it can truly slow down our body physically as well as our mind to just relax and be in the moment. The next way is taking deep breaths. Truly taking a deep breath. And I didn't realize until more recently how much science there is behind breathing and how important it really is. So I challenge you all, even right now, let's stop and take a couple deep breaths. Big belly breaths. So when we're breathing in, we're gonna be pushing out our stomach and really breathing. So we're not breathing with our mouth, we're breathing with our entire diaphragm. So take a deep breath in, and then release. Did you feel that? I did. Even being up here with these lights and cameras, I could feel my body relaxing with just a deep breath. And last but not least, one of my favorite, I learned this a couple months ago when I was working with the Milken Global Health Institute. And we discussed through Journey Meditation, minute meditations. And what a minute meditation is, it's literally just that. It's 1 minute to stop and meditate. And so I'm actually gonna have us do this right now because it's pretty powerful how 1 minute can seem a lot longer, but how powerful that 1 minute can be. So in this minute coming up, I want us to just stop our mind, think about where we're at, think about what our goals are for the next 30 minutes, and do just that. We're gonna start in 3, 2, 1, and go. Okay, so that was 15 seconds. How long did that feel, right? But where did your mind go? How did your body feel? So imagine if you use that tool even with your clients when they come in to train with you or when they're coming for a health coaching session. I challenge you to even encourage with a 1 minute meditation before you start your session so that both you and your client are focused and in the moment. Because as we mentioned, that today in this day and age, between our cell phones going off, our emails going off, all the stressors that are pulling for our energy day to day to day, that takes away from getting the most out of the things we do. And that's what creates stress. So if we can center ourselves for 60 seconds before we engage in the next thing, I guarantee you can be more productive with our sessions with our clients. They're gonna walk away getting more out of it. You're gonna walk away feeling more productive. And all in all, everyone's gonna be that much closer to their goals. So this is a great way too, not just with the client, but even in a work setting before you start a meeting or a webinar or anything, to center yourself. And if you have a group of people, whether it's a group fitness class, a meeting, a lecture, etc., to do this to help everyone get there. Because the reality of it is, it's really hard to get people to truly pay attention and truly be engaged. And by doing so, we're alleviating a lot of unnecessary stress. The next one, I always say this is my favorite. My students laugh at me because whenever I talk about this stuff, I'm like, this is my favorite, and then this is too. But this is. So this is goal setting. And maybe many of you have heard of SMART goals, maybe have not, but if you check out the slide and follow me along, hopefully this acronym will stick with you. So SMART goals stand for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And for the sake of all of us being in the health and wellness field, I'm gonna use a health goal to kind of walk us through what a SMART goal looks like. So I have a student at the beginning of the semester, I have all my students write SMART goals in their lifetime fitness class. So we're in the classroom lecturing, but I make them choose a physical goal for the semester. So I had one student that says, well, I want to be a better runner. Great, what does that mean? So now we have to break it down and be specific. Well, I've never had the chance to run a 5K, I would love to do that. Awesome, now we're getting specific. This student wants to run a 5K. Is it measurable? Yes, Did we run a 5K or not? So we can say, yes, this goal is achieved or not. Is it achievable? A 5K is a great place to start. There's many apps out there that can help us get from being on a couch to running a 5K. Is it relevant? Their goal was to become a better runner. So by setting the goal of running a 5K, that's pretty relevant to what we're trying to get done. And last but not least, time-bound. So it's important in order to hold ourselves and our clients accountable that we put a timeline on things. So let's say, for example, 3 months. So we went from saying, I want to be a better runner, to now, I want to run a 5K within 3 months. So in 3 months, we can look back and we can say, did we do this or not? And the other great thing about SMART goals is now we can reverse engineer from the end to figure out what steps our clients need to take to get to where they want to be. And the key is applying with goal setting to those other tactics of managing stress so that we can take action. Because again, ideas and intentions are great, but they don't mean anything until we act. And last but not least, we have the MOVE principle. So with this was I love acronyms, so I can take credit for this one. I created this. And we're gonna go through these. If you look at the slide, we're gonna be talking about mindfulness, objectivity, visualization, and exercise. So mindfulness. This is similar to meditation. But again, with meditation, we're usually using a dedicated time or space to close our eyes and be present, where mindfulness is more the act of being present day to day, moment to moment in life. And one of the sayings that I use for myself and with my clients and with my students is keep your head where your feet are. And what does that mean? That means right now, I'm standing right here and we're talking about stress management. So then rather about worrying how many emails are coming in and how many texts I'm missing and what's going on with my family back home, I'm here in this moment, in this space. And the more that we can get our clients to practice mindfulness, it's by default the less stressed they're going to be because we're not allowing the space for the other stuff, the non-essential stuff, to creep in and vie for our energy and our attention. The next one is objectivity. So objectivity is the ability to step back and say, is this true? A lot of times as humans, we tend to be our own worst critic, and we probably see that in our clients. So as a coach or a trainer, we can step back and help them see the facts. I had a student the other day that was really stressed out. She had a lot of health issues going on, but it related back to the way that she was viewing herself, which is a very skewed view. And so I asked her if I had permission to be brutally honest, because it's one of the things that I've learned is, for me, one of the best things to help people make progress. And she said yes. And so I laid out the situation from my point of view without feelings involved. And once I did that, a huge smile came across her face, and she was like, I never thought of it like that. But sometimes we need that. We need that objectivity to help us step out of ourselves and help our clients step out of themselves so that they can see a situation for what it really is. And I don't know about you, but oftentimes when we allow ourselves to ruminate on something, we create something that's so much bigger than what it really is. I don't know about you, but even something as simple as going on Instagram Live, if I scare myself out of doing it, I don't. But then once I do the thing, I'm like, that was it? So a lot of life is like that. And we can teach our clients that too, to learn how to be objective and just do what it is that we're trying to do and remove all that non-essential energy and nonsense stress that gets in the way. The next one is visualization. And visualization is seeing oneself doing the behavior or achieving the outcome that we're aspiring to do. This is a well-known practice among elite athletes and sports teams. And that's just that. They visualize themselves making the shot. They visualize themselves winning the championship. They visualize themselves doing exactly what it is that they're training to do. And we don't have to be elite athletes to use this technique. In fact, I encourage all of you to try and maybe with this with your clients. So if they're aiming to lose X amount of weight, or run that 5K, or eat better, rather than having them say, once I do this, then I'll be this. Let's flip the story. They are there now. Have them imagine themselves doing the thing now. And then that transgresses and transpires into their day-to-day behaviors. So visualization, though, is another way that we can help people manage stress, Because if they can see themselves with their normal response, getting stressed out, running late, we can help them calm down and say, hey, you've got an extra 5 minutes in the car. Why not think about your goals for the day or think about your intentions rather than just beating yourself up for being late? Again, it all goes back to that cognitive appraisal on a situation and how we can choose the way that we respond to that situation. And last but certainly not least, one that we all probably are involved in is exercise. But exercise truly can be one of the best ways to manage and mitigate stress. The irony here is that exercise is usually the first thing to go out of someone's life when they're under stress. Take, for example, my friend. He's a high-ranking officer in the military. He recently took command of a pretty important base and also had a pretty significant life change. Within that 2 to 3 months, he gained about 30 pounds. Me being the tough person was like, what are you doing? This is your job. Jokingly, but I realized that he was under a lot of stress. So we stepped back and we assessed the situation. And what we realized is that those behaviors that were his routine, he let those go. But in reality, if we can establish with our clients a fundamental routine, those things can actually help us cope with major changes in life. And so it's awesome to see now, flash forward a year later, despite taking command of another huge base and going through another pretty significant personal life change, his story is completely different. And often I get texts, I'm on East Coast time, from Pacific time, early at night or late in the night, hey, I just got my workout in, or hey, it's going. Totally different mindset and totally different outlook on life. But it took some time to sit back, be objective, visualize, and make that change in order to get exercise back into his day-to-day life. And so I encourage you again to kind of tie all these in together when we're working with our clients. Because oftentimes if they're stressed, they might say, they likely will say, I don't have time to exercise. But I often remind them with a little tough love that you and me, as long as we're alive, we have 1,440 minutes in a day. And we all get that opportunity to choose what we do with those minutes. And so if we can break it down to make it objective, hey, can you give me 20 minutes of walking today? And that will truly help us with mitigating our stress. So again, as coaches, if we can simplify things, break them down, give them bite-sized pieces of tools and information that they can use to manage the day-to-day stressors in their life, we will see huge changes. So before I summarize things, I want you to think about this. With all health behaviors, especially when I work with my corporate clients, I talk about investing, right? That's something where I think I didn't start thinking about until I turned 30, but I wish I would have learned that when I was 10. Because this idea of compound interest, not only in money, it literally plays into our lives with every single thing we do. And it also happens with stress. Because if we allow our clients and ourselves to continuously perpetuate a life that's stressful, that builds over time. And that's when we see those chronological, physiological effects of stress that hurt our health and prevent us from optimizing our health and well-being. However, if we take that idea of compound interest and we apply it to doing the small things, the minute meditations, the 20 minutes of exercise, the visualizing, those things also compound as compound interest. So now our health 401k, I use that with my clients, my H401k. How's yours doing? Have you been doing the things day to day to manage your stress? Have you been doing the day-to-day things to help you get to where you want to be? But by not doing those, you're also choosing not to invest in yourself and in your client's health. So I challenge you to think about that. And if you do have clients that give you the reason I don't have time or I don't have the ability or I don't, maybe help them understand that in other terms that might relate to them. Find out where they're at, and then we'll help them get to where they need to be. So just to wrap up for today, again, the one thing that I think it's important to drive home is that stress is in the eye of the beholder. Literally, what's stressful to me might not be stressful to you, might or might not be stressful to our clients. It's important to be relative, and it's important to meet our clients where they're at. Keeping in mind that there's 3 types of stress: acute stress, episodic acute stress, and chronic stress. Acute stress is that roller coaster ride or crossing that finish line. We get that adrenaline rush, and then we calm down. Episodic acute stress is a little more constant. It's running late to work. It's being caught in traffic. It's forgetting that important speech at home. It's running into the meeting late. It's a series of events that keeps us aroused and keeps us on guard. And then last but not least is chronic stress. And this is when that episodic acute stress becomes more consistent, or we've experienced a pretty traumatic event and we're not really coping that well with it. We start to let our health behaviors go. Our stress then manifests itself in two response waves. So when we experience acute stress or episodic acute stress, it's typically when our SAM pathway comes in and we start releasing adrenaline and getting that fight or flight response from our sympathetic nervous system. However, we also have chronic stress, and again, that's that long term. That's when our pituitary gland gets the adrenals going and we release cortisol. But again, we know that long-term release of cortisol can have some pretty negative impacts on our health. Stress impacts all body systems, from our musculoskeletal system, our endocrine system, reproductive system, cardiovascular, respiratory. All of these systems are impacted by stress. But going back to what we mentioned, it all starts once an event happens, that cognitive appraisal. How do we and how do our clients view that event is going to determine how our body responds. And last but not least, the best part of all of this is that it can be managed. By using the tools we talked about, the MOVE principle, mindfulness, objectivity, visualization, exercise, cognitive behavioral coaching, meditation, yoga, relaxation, deep breaths, all of these things can help us manage stress. And the best thing is, they're not expensive, you don't need a lot to do them, and anyone can do them. So in closing, here are some resources that I used to help for today's presentation. I encourage you to check them out, especially if this intrigues you. And here are some more here to, again, help you follow up on stress, the effects of it, and how to mitigate it. And with that, I'm going to bring Jackie back on.
Thank you very much. Great job.
Thanks, Jackie.
So I feel more relaxed.
Good. That's the goal.
Just having listened to the talk about being relaxed and reducing stress. So thank you very much. I hope all of you that are watching are feeling the same way. So we do have some questions that are coming in. Just a reminder to type in your question for Kelly, and we'll get to those in just a second. If you would like to connect with Kelly after today's presentation is over, on your slide you can see her contact information. So feel free to chat with her, ask her other questions about stress or what you're doing in your life at kellyvargo.com, right?
Yes,
and she can answer those questions via those contact methods. Also, as Kelly mentioned, we do have a lot of other great information and content that ACE offers around the area of stress management and lifestyle medicine, which is a big trend now in the industry and something that we want to make sure that our pros, you, have a chance to learn more about. So on your slide, you can see a couple other courses that ACE offers if you'd like to delve more into this topic. Also, as Kelly is a certified health coach with ACE, our health coaching certification also goes into great detail about stress management as well as lifestyle medicine and how to help our clients overcome things like stressful situations. And we do talk about cognitive behavioral coaching like you mentioned today.
Yeah, Jackie, and I just want to add on to that. Also, there's a behavior change specialist too, and that one I highly recommend. We dive more into the psychology behind it, which I think now in society, we're looking at that a lot more and realizing how imperative that is to making behavior change.
Great, yes. So a lot of great content that we offer, and you can find out more about that at acefitness.org. Also, if you would like to receive your CECs, remember we do have the CEC Club now available with ACE, and you can have unlimited CECs for the entire year. So more information at acefitness.org. Okay. So let's get to a few of those questions that we have coming in. And one of the questions that I saw earlier was around using the SMART goals. I know that's your favorite, right? So using the SMART goals and maybe applying it to something other than our physical wellness, right? There's a lot of areas of wellness that we can apply that to. So let's talk a little bit more about the SMART goals and maybe how we can apply that to things maybe not related to losing weight or things like that, but just other areas of our lives.
Absolutely. You know, it's really funny because I was at, I don't know how many, we're all in some way running our own business, right? Whether you work for a company or you work for yourself, whatever. But I think it goes back to the bigger picture in life, and I oftentimes when I'm teaching relate fitness or wellness to life. And so if you think about, let's say a year, where are you at now and where do you want to be? If we don't take time to set goals for ourselves, chances are we're probably going to be like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. It's the same thing, a different year.
Right.
So whether that, again, it doesn't have to be a health goal. Maybe yourself, you're trying to work on stress. So you say, I'm going to meditate for 3 minutes a day for the next month. Or for me, again, consistency is everything I think in life, whether it's training, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's this. And so for me, one of my things is getting on camera more, and for one excuse or another, I haven't. So I made a commitment to my coach, okay, I'm gonna be on Instagram the next 30 days straight on a video. Like, just do the thing. So in any avenue of life, we can literally create a SMART goal. Maybe you wanna work on your relationship with your husband or wife, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend. So you say, I am going to make sure that I have 2 date nights a week for the next 3 months, and that is a priority and a non-negotiable. So I think that if we're really honest with ourselves and our clients, we can break everything down into a SMART goal. And sometimes it's tough, right? Sometimes those things are uncomfortable because we have to call ourselves out and we have to call other people out. But I think that's truly the only way to make progress is to be accountable.
Great. And so we can apply that SMART goal to, like you said, our relationships, our work, our finances.
Absolutely.
All of those areas of our life, right?
Absolutely. And honestly, like if you think about it, if you apply a SMART goal to those aspects of your life, chances are you're going to reduce stress because now you actually have a game plan. Like now you know what you're doing. I mean, especially with financial stuff, like you just said, that's a huge stressor in people's lives, relationships, careers. But I think oftentimes, and I think even for me, it wasn't until the past year I actually got a financial advisor, because I think we don't get coached on it, and it's uncomfortable for people to talk about.
Yeah.
But if you set goals for yourself or you help your clients, that can mitigate stress a lot, which then frees up energy to work out and focus on your health and things like that.
Right. Great. So SMART goals, very important, right?
Yes.
Great. So let's talk a little bit.
Type them in.
Yeah, type in your SMART goals. So we have a couple of other questions coming in. So great questions, everyone. Something else that you mentioned in the process that we go through physiologically with stress, we increase our cortisol levels, right?
Yeah.
And you talked about how that affects the body. So let's just talk a little bit more about that and understand, from a physiological standpoint, what are more of those effects that cortisol can have? How can that affect our immune system, like you mentioned, and maybe our weight as well?
So super high level, because I'll be total full disclaimer, I'm not an endocrinologist, so I definitely don't want to misspeak.
Yeah.
But with cortisol being elevated, it makes it a lot tougher for us to lose that body fat, right? And so when we're going through, and oftentimes we're super stressed, even if you're doing all the right things, you're exercising. I remember there was a time when I was competing, and I was exercising 2 to 3 hours a day and eating maybe 1,200 calories, and I did not lose a pound.
Yeah.
And I was mad and I was frustrated. And then I remember going to get my levels checked, and they're like, you just need to relax, which is then makes me more stressed out. Like, what do you mean? How do I relax? And so I think, it sounds really woo-woo, we're out there, but in reality, if we want our bodies to change, we have to relax. Because what happens with cortisol being elevated, it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It's in fight or flight mode, and hey, screw you, I'm gonna do what I want. So again, that's not the super scientific, but that's to me more the applied. Hey, this is what's going on. Not only that, as you mentioned, our immune system's gonna drop. We become more susceptible to getting sick, right? We're not performing well in work.
Yeah.
There's all these other side effects that can happen if we don't manage things from the beginning.
Right.
And I think for anybody, especially with clients that are trying to lose weight, that are trying to do that, the first thing I tell them, I don't care about your weight. I don't want to know it, because I want to focus on the process. Because the second we can get them to undergo a process, that doesn't become a stressor. And by default, things start falling into place. I had a client recently, he's mid-30s, was trying to lose weight. We took a DEXA. A DEXA, guys, is like a machine that can measure your body composition, percentage of fat, percentage of muscle. So did a DEXA. He started out, I want to say he was upper 20s percent body fat, and was at about 210. We've been working together for about 2.5 months. He's already hit his goal. His goal was 190. But the thing was, he lost his grandfather. He went through a 2-year breakup. He transitioned moving. we did it on no meal plan. We had a little workout program. We had some just nutrition goals.
Yeah.
But it was literally like mindset. And we'd get on a call each week. How are you feeling? What are you going on? What are our tactics to deal with this? And to me, it was the coolest thing because I've been down that road where I've competed as an athlete and I was very strict and I was very regimented, and yet I didn't see things change.
Yeah.
But once you kind of let go of control and you let that stress down, like, it's pretty phenomenal how the body responds.
Great. And so really the exercise and kind of the physical aspect of things is affecting things from the outside. We want to be affecting things from the inside.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Great. So still some questions coming in. We'll take just a couple more of these. And so let's talk just a little bit more about, working with clients that have trouble maybe getting into these SMART goals. And as you mentioned before, you use the technique to change the rubber band from side to side and changing that mental thought pattern. What if that mental thought pattern, for example, is, I don't want to exercise. I'm not motivated to exercise, but I know that it's important. I just don't want to do it. Right?
Yes.
So kind of let's go into how we might help a client work through that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think all of us have probably heard this at some point in our training. It's important to meet people where they're at. And so what I always tell even my students, I'm like, listen, I don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. And when you allow someone to have that freedom, the reality is, like, everyone wants to be a part of a club. Everyone wants to be a part of a group. But you don't want to be told what group you need to belong to. Because the second you tell someone to do something, they don't. Yeah. And so I think it's being patient, it's warming up, but it's also like finding what it is that might be that movement. So again, they might not be a runner, but maybe they like to walk. Walking is one of the best things that we can do. And I think I've learned that over the years, because Jax and I feel like are a lot alike. We're like these hardcore athletes and we want to be tough. And but there's so many benefits from just walking therapeutically and being physically active. And I think that's the other thing I've learned more as I've taught and learned, like, there's a difference between exercise and physical activity. And everyone might not love to exercise. And as much as I would love that, I'd rather just make sure everyone's physically active, right? So maybe at work we have them use a standing desk or work on that. Or maybe we challenge, hey, do you think you could take the stairs instead of the elevator? Or maybe you can park further away when you go to work. So if we can just start incorporating, again, small things and making those a lifestyle, then we can start talking more down the line about the bigger things. But the last thing we want to do is go from 0 to 100, because I think a lot of people are more a lot alike with this all or nothing mindset. I know I've been there. Like, if you set me up for failure, then I'm just like, whatever, right? So we want to meet people where they're at and then gradually get into that space.
And if we give them these goals of, like, you're going to work out this many times a day, that also creates more stress, right?
Totally. And so even with that, I'll have people come to me that they want to do all the things, right? And I'm like, nope, I want you to eat breakfast. That's it. You know what I mean? So very small, very manageable. And then they start getting momentum, and then they start doing the things, and then you're like, okay, now we're gonna try this, now we're gonna try this. But make sure you give your client the power. Like, let them drive that conversation.
Great. And as we're hearing and seeing now in our chat bar, thank you, Sander, for typing this in, that exercise is also a stress on the body.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
It is a stress.
It's counterintuitive, right? And that's when I go back to saying walking, right? Because yes, high intensity training is great. We know this. It's great for stimulating metabolism and fat loss. However, if we don't build in rest and we don't build in exercise, it's almost that reverse feedback loop. When I talked about, when people say they're so stressed and they don't have much time to work out, it's the same thing. People that are so intense and training that way all the time and not letting our bodies recover, we're actually like hurting it more than helping it. So I think that's a great point, to make sure you build in rest days when you're working with clients, or you build in active recovery days. Putting yoga in, not having my old mindset where, like, oh, if I'm not sweating and like dying, it doesn't count. Like, no, that couldn't be further from the truth. So build in activities that are restorative, like walking, like yoga, like Pilates, things that are gonna kind of relax the body, but also keep us moving.
Yeah, great. And I love that distinction that you made between physical activity and exercise. And I think that's something that we can bring to our clients to say, you don't need to go work out. It's just about just moving.
Right? Yes, absolutely.
Great. So great questions, everyone. If you have more questions for Kelly, we're going to be doing a Facebook chat over the next couple of days that is live on our Ace Fitness Facebook page right now. And so if you have another question that you'd like to ask Kelly, you can go to our Ace Fitness Facebook page and type that question in there, and she'll be answering those over the next few days.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, guys.
So again, if you would like to receive continuing education credits for today's presentation, you can take a look at the slide and follow the directions. You will go to our live webinars page and make a purchase of today's presentation. The recorded version of today's webinar will go into your MyAce account, and once you pass the associated quiz, you'll receive 0.1 CECs within your MyAce account. If you would like to re-watch this webinar, this live presentation, you can do so by using the same link that you used today and rewind and catch up on any content that you would like to review again. Also, we will be having another live webinar coming up next month, and we will be having our expert in Mike Diebler to talk to us about how to do small group training, program design for healthier communities. So this will be a great webinar if you would like to understand how to work with small groups in your business. Kelly, thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much, guys, for being here.
So don't forget to connect with Kelly. Also remember to connect with ACE in a variety of ways and let us know what you thought about today's live presentation. Thanks for joining us. Let's get people moving.